Whatever happened to the Samantha Power bombshell? Folks, this was a huge story. Hat tip Jay Latimer at American Thinker. Someone sent me this story on my email. This is a great point. One of the challenges of Spygate is that such a sprawling, complicated tale filled with competing narratives and motives open to interpretation. We understand that this is a serious situation, possibly the biggest scandal in U.S. history. How can one get the message across to the average American without his eyes glazing over? Folks, this brings us, as he says, to Samantha Power. Don't forget what happened here. Samantha Power was Barack Obama's ambassador to the United Nations. Samantha Power's name appeared on unmasking requests. Let's simplify this. There's no need to make this overly complicated. There were calls that were intercepted on foreigners that our intelligence agencies have intercepted. The American portion of that call, if those calls were made to U.S. citizens, is masked. It'll say, whatever, U.S. citizen 1. Request to unmask, give the Samantha Power, in this case, the name of the person, essentially enabling you to listen in or read the transcripts of their phone calls. Samantha Power is a UN diplomat. She's not an intelligence agency personnel. She's not. She doesn't work for the intelligence agencies. What is she doing requesting the identities, or in other words, unmasking, requesting the identities 260 times in the election year on behalf of the Obama administration? What was she doing requesting those names and that information? This is a huge scandal. Why? Because Samantha Power, and I have to take her at her word here, says, hey, I didn't ask for those names. I didn't unmask those names. I don't know what you're talking about. Somebody did it in my name. Okay. Is any entrepreneurial media type out there even remotely curious about who then told her to do it, or who used her name, who signed her? I know if someone signed the name Dan Bongino on a check somewhere, I'd be pretty curious who did it if it wasn't me. And if it was me, I'd know because I did it. So if Samantha Power didn't spy on people in the Trump team or others in a diplomatic post, then who used her name? Is anybody even a little bit curious about this? Again, this case has gotten so complicated. I think the author of that piece, Jay Latimer, is absolutely correct. That the complications in Spygate have people like, oh my gosh, what's going on? All you have to know is this: that spy operation happened. The New York Times reported on it themselves. And I'm not happy with the answers, and you shouldn't be either.
Well, Sean, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. I want you to think in terms of buckets, and I frankly would start. Keep in mind, Devin and Jimmy and Ratcliffe only have 5 minutes, so you have to be very strategic and have a pretty narrow goal. Start with bias. You got rid of Peter Strzok because he wanted Clinton to win and Trump to lose, but yet you hired people who wanted Clinton to win and Trump to lose. So how much bias are you willing to put up with? You fired Strzok, but you hired a bunch of prosecutors who felt the same way. Number two, someone needs to ask about this legal issue. If you can resist an unlawful arrest, can you resist an unpredicated investigation, which forces Mueller to go to the origins of this Russia investigation and how much time did he spend siphoning through that? Then I would go to what did you find? No collusion, no criminal collusion despite 2 years. What did you not find? An indictable offense for obstruction of justice. And then this is a category, and I would encourage Devin and Jimmy to think about this. What did you not bother to look for? Y'all just got through talking about Samantha Power and other people in the American government that may have wanted to influence either an election or an administration. We spent 2 years focused on whether a foreign country was going to influence or interfere with our election. Mueller, did you look at our own government? Did you look at what our own people were doing to maybe put their finger on the scale? Did you interview Christopher Steele? Do you know which Russians were feeding dirt to the American electorate via the DNC? Did you interview Glenn Simpson? Did you interview Jim Comey about why he leaked those memos? So there are 5 categories. There's bias, the legal issues, what did you find, what did you not find, and then importantly, what did you not even bother to look for?
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's go to these new developments based on the FOIA request granted the ACLJ, Devin Nunes, and that would be Samantha Power, 350% increase in unmasking in 2016. That seems excessive to me. My understanding of surveillance and unmasking of American citizens, there are very strict guidelines. And when an American is identified in a phone call with perhaps somebody that we ought to be surveilling, if they're not involved in any nefarious activity, we practice something called minimization. And if the report is written up, the American is not identified. But we do know unmaskings were rare, and then we had this increase in activity. How does that tie into everything that you investigated as it relates to the so-called collusion that never occurred? But when you factor it into a rigged investigation into Hillary, in my opinion, and then, of course, a premeditated fraud on the FISA court, not once but 4 times, that seems problematic.
Well, you have probably the 2 best possible guests you could have on tonight for this question, because I was the one who uncovered through sources that these unmaskings had occurred. So we ran an unmasking investigation. Trey is the right guy to have on tonight, because he's the one who interviewed and ran the interview of Samantha Power. What is just unexplainable in all of this is, how on earth did you unmask this many people? It was hundreds and hundreds of unmaskings. So what I said from the very first day when I briefed the Republicans on the committee, what I couldn't make any sense of is that why there were so many unmaskings of Trump transition officials during the transition time period. And then later, what we know, we can't get into specifics of it, but there were pieces of that intelligence that was leaked. And that's not explainable, and Mueller should have to answer that too. Did he ever look into all of these leaks?
I look at, if we lose Trey Gowdy, you're an attorney. Our Constitution is the basis, the foundation of our rule of law. Equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws. Very, very important concepts and principles. And more importantly, I think if we don't protect the civil liberties, these tools of intelligence can spy on every single word ever stated by any one American. These are powerful but necessary tools in an evil world. And we entrust, I believe, the best intelligence people in the country, 99% of them, with these powerful tools to protect us. But if they're turned on the American people, or they abuse these powers and they ignore civil liberties and Miranda rights and the proper procedures to obtain a warrant where they would have a right to listen to a conversation, what is the danger?
Well, Devin tried to get some reforms when we did some reauthorizations, and a guy you may have heard of named Schiff from California insisted that those reforms not be part of the reauthorizations. There was a request, an unmasking request, if memory serves me, Devin, the day of the inauguration. So you got people that got 30 minutes left in their service to the country, and they're making an unmasking request. Here's where I lose a little bit of patience. Devin did a great job, but we have the head of the CIA. We have the head of the DNI. We have the head of the NSA. If we still have unmasking questions, we shouldn't have to go to the Hill or Jay Sekulow to get the answers. These are people that we put in position. Right. So, Devin, you ought to be able to pick up the phone and find out what happened with this increase in unmasking requests.
All right,
my friend from Utah, Director Brennan, why is it important to protect the identity of U.S. persons as part of our surveillance programs?
Because there is, I think, a right of all Americans to privacy, and that sometimes information is collected about U.S. persons who may or may not be involved in any manner of criminal activity. And therefore, respecting that privacy of U.S. citizens, the intelligence community goes to great lengths to cover the identities of U.S. persons if they happen to be included in an intelligence collection.
For all those reasons and others, and again, we're not talking about leaks. We're talking about masking within the intelligence community, right? We're not talking about reading it on the front page of newspapers. We're talking about prohibitions that you place on yourself with respect to identifying U.S. persons as part of our surveillance programs, right?
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
And you just cited some of the very important reasons that we do that, and I would assume that there is a process, a protocol under which the intelligence community goes through if they seek to unmask a U.S. person's name.
That's correct.
Have you ever requested that a U.S. person's name be unmasked?
Yes, I have.
Have you also either approved or denied requests of others that a U.S. person's name be unmasked?
I don't recall in my tenure at CIA any decision on unmasking for someone else coming up to my level. It would have been, that decision would have been made at a lower level within the agency.
Are you aware of any requests within the community that were denied?
I do not. I didn't have visibility into requests that were being made across the government, so I don't recall one that I was denied.
Do you recall any U.S. ambassadors asking that names be unmasked?
I don't know. Maybe it's ringing a vague bell, but I could not answer with any confidence.
Do you remember what your last day on the job was at the CIA? What was the date?
It was noon on January 20th when I gave up my responsibilities as director of CIA.
On either January 19th or up till noon on January the 20th, did you make any unmasking request?
I do not believe I did.
So you did not make any request on the last day that you were employed?
No, I was not in the agency on the last day I was employed. I definitely know that on the last day I was employed, I definitely did not make such a request.
Thank you, Director.
Someone in a political position like Samantha Power has the ability to use her authority and say, I want to see that American's name, even though the professional intelligence officer decided that that wasn't necessary for the intelligence product. That practice has been growing in leaps and bounds. Between 2013 and 2016, it went up 300%. And just last year, it went up another 70% under Donald Trump. I just got these new numbers. So 16,700 Americans last year had their name unmasked over the recommendation or against the recommendation of an intelligence professional. A lot of people in Congress, the ACLU, lots of people are concerned about this practice. No one has been able to explain, including Samantha Power, why she unmasked so many names, hundreds of names, more than one a day during the election. What she told congressional investigators last summer is, I didn't ask for a lot of these names, and I don't know how my name got to be used. It's obvious my name was used.
Which is even more concerning.
Yeah,
right?
But it means there's a looseness in the system.
Yes.
We know some of the names that were unmasked were Trump officials, particularly in the post-election period when we were in the transition period. I believe Devin Nunes has said there were dozens of times that Trump transition officials were unmasked. People are trying to get to the bottom of this. Now come these new documents. And just like Pete Strzok and Lisa Page, who had their own theory of what was going on with the Trump election and bashing him and using all these names, smelly Walmart shoppers, things like that. You see in these emails some significant anti-Trump rhetoric by Power and her assistants and the people she's corresponding with in the.
And what are the nature of those? What are the nature of those?
Well, some of them are pretty strong words. There are words like repugnant moral bully.
Right.
There are a lot of discussion about using TV appearances, speeches, a 60 Minutes appearance at the end of the administration to try to counter Trump and to shame Trump on immigration or other of his policies. So what you really see is in government emails where no politics is supposed to be involved, a political effort to try to shame Trump, to tease him, demean him in these emails. Very, very similar to the
Could
text
this be a
messages.
Hatch Act violation?
It's one of the questions that congressional investigators are saying. They want to look at this for a couple of reasons. One, was her anti-Trump bias in any way a motive for any of the unmaskings for her or her staff? How did her name get used? That's one question. The second question is the question we just learned with Kellyanne Conway, which is when you engage in political rhetoric on government resources and government, it can potentially be an Hatch Act violation. Mark Meadows says he's looking at that. The original House intelligence investigators and Senate intelligence investigators were very interested when I contacted them last night about these emails, and they want to know, is this a new motive? Is this a new element layer to the unmasking of Sarah Power that was done under her name?
How much more is there to this story? Is this just the tip of the iceberg? We still don't know a lot about those unmasking. Which of her staff was doing that, or which other intelligence professionals?
There is a big giant hole in this narrative, and as you said earlier, it goes to a concerning question: is the system so loose that any person can unmask? Was Donald Trump targeted for unmasking, something he alleges he was spied on? These are questions that have not yet been answered. And meanwhile, while we've been dancing around this for 2 years, there's a sudden spike in unmasking again. 70% spike in 2018 on unmasking. This should concern anyone who's concerned about civil liberties, the Fourth Amendment, the Constitution, and we don't have good answers yet.
Well, it goes to the central matter of what we're looking at. I'm sure John Solomon is going to be bringing us a lot more on this. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Sagar.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.
So if you're going to subpoena people, let's subpoena Samantha Powers. Let's make sure she comes in, because you know what I have? I've got emails on her official account where she was going after Donald Trump while she was working for our government, and indeed at the same time was unmasking individuals. So if we want to hold people accountable, let's do it with the same standard, because I don't think it's right to hold her to a different standard.